Yeah, Kodama and greetings, fam. It's Mansho Nawasha, just coming to you to talk about last night's conversation in the Black Love School. Last night was our live Q&A, which is a feature in the Black Love School. In your membership, we have the over 50 pre-recorded classes, and then we come together on scheduled times to have the live Q&A. So we are in the summer semester. The focus is intimacy and sex. And last night's conversation was about sex diets. And this is always one of my favorites, especially as a black man out here, striving to keep my virility as I age, and really just, we want to be at optimal health. Obviously. Look, can't get it out. We want to be at optimal health, obviously, for our sex life with our partner. We want to look our best, feel our best, smell our best, taste our best, have the most flexibility, strength, and endurance. And what we often don't talk about in the Western world is that a lot of that is food related. And so that's what the sex diets class is all about. And last night we dove in. We had the brothers and sisters, the singles, the couples, and we had a lively conversation. So I think for me, one of the things that is always my favorite part about this class is speaking to brothers and reminding them that we need 5 key minerals to stay virile. And when we have these 5 key minerals, they all do something specific, obviously, to our body systems and our sexual health. I won't get into all of them. You have to join the membership and listen to and watch the class, and then join us for the next live Q&A on sex diets. But one of the minerals is selenium. And selenium is so important for sperm production. It's so important for so many sexual functions that we have in men. And also selenium in combination with zinc really helps us keep our hair black. And, if we have graying, I got graying here now, I'm getting graying in my eyebrows. So, whenever our hair is getting gray, we're losing selenium and zinc, right? So we talked about that. And another thing that I'll just say that I loved, I think somebody brought up, and I think it was actually you, Nawasha, that brought up in the live discussion about papaya seeds. And papaya seeds for us as men being a natural contraceptive for men. So when we're eating papaya seeds in excess, what we're doing is neutralizing our sperm, so that when we ejaculate, the sperm dies almost instantly when it enters the womb. And in this way, we can plan our pregnancies, and we can have full-on unprotected sex, which is what we like as men. And, no condoms, I mean. And then we can have a surety that we're not impregnating our partner if she and we choose not to have children. So that was a dope part of the conversation, and I really enjoyed everybody's input on that. And when I think you or somebody brought up a point about it, it reminded me of when I was in Rites of Passage, how one of the brothers had told me that, and I was 29 years old at the time. So it was new information for me. I had never heard this about the natural contraceptives for men. And it was one of the brothers who was just eating papaya seeds. He would just have a bag of papaya seeds. And if you know what a papaya looked like when it's cut, committed. It's a lot of seeds. But what really blew my mind about him is that he was telling all the brothers that he was spiritually celibate and sexually celibate, but he was still eating papaya seeds. So it was not only like it was a revelation for me. I had never heard that up until that point. I did not know about all the many ways you can naturally neutralize your sperm. And it was interesting because I was not celibate, and I had never even met a black man who told me he was celibate, and I believed it. I at that point, probably at 29, I probably had never met men who said they were celibate. It wasn't until in my 30s and into my 30s that I was even hearing men saying that they were choosing to be celibate. Prior to that, it was sex, fun, and rock and roll. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
I think you get a lot from Rites of Passage. I'm grateful.
Yeah.
I said in the class, I'm so grateful that Masho introduced me to Queen Afua. And I was in my very early 20s. So it left an impression on me, too, to hear people's stories in that kind of format. Because I don't think, it's not as common in a extended format in the United States.
Right.
I think for the average Black person, sometimes culturally, spiritually, your family might be involved in something and you have to go through it. And even that can be isolating because everybody else around you is not. So like if you're Muslim, if you're, practicing a traditional African religion, you may have something that you're going through similar to to me, like a Sweet 16 or a quinceañera. You have cultural elements, you have remnants of things that you go through. But that was an experience where I had camaraderie with women who were my age and then older, So for the first time, I was in a very small group in that rite of passage where I learned those same things at 21, 22, 23-ish. And being in that environment all the way to women who were in their 50s and 60s, and that kind of intergenerational female conversation, there were things that I wasn't thinking about that now I'm coming into that age that I remember, it's really anchored into that time. So we did talk about the papaya seeds, and that was even something in our rite of passage because we were talking about giving nutrition to the men that we are intimate with, that we care about, that we love, so that they also are honoring and taking care of our womb. So if we can give something to the men that we're having sex
killing
with,
that acid sperm,
basically, right? And I also, it really highlighted for me, which we mentioned in the class, the pre-recorded class, that typically all contraception, especially anything that's taken, ingested, or given into the body, is for women. So women are taking the pills, women are taking the shots, women are doing, ovulation blockers, but because women are getting pregnant, and in order to manage your pregnancies, women are thinking of that, and I think even men think of it for women. But this idea that there's something that men can do to adjust their sperm potency and sperm count, I think it was really revolutionary for me too, because of the way that things are presented. And I think when it comes to sex and when it comes to anything, because the class is talking about nutrition, but how poor nutrition affects us or is affecting us right now, and how, the right nutrition could restore a lot of our dysfunction, our sexual dysfunctions. We are not really educated about health, wellness, and nutrition. So the biggest takeaway for me, I think, was the hydration aspect, because we're in New Jersey where we get 4 seasons. That does affect me, like going from being really, really, really hot to then crisp and cool, and then really, really, really cold and dry, and then it's spring, and then it's back to really hot. So we're in the throes of things in the summer, and although you might be sweating, that actually can take from some of your hydration. So you have to be intentional about replacing it. But the best way to replace it is with your high water foods. So that's my biggest takeaway. And it's time for the fruit feast again, and time for an understanding of improving your circulatory system and your levels of hydration in the most natural way possible. That I think is also a point. So I'm happy to see that so much is in common conversation and readily available now.
Yeah, 25 years ago, you wasn't hearing any of this stuff. Now it's everywhere.
But I think that, there's always something to take away from making whatever you're doing in your life the most natural for you. And the most natural for you as a Black person. This is something that, although information can become more popular, there's also sometimes, I think, in a culture that's very commercial and consumer based and hierarchical, if that's a word, sometimes the most natural thing gets extracted from anything that's cultural in order to be resold to you, repackaged, and then there
Right.
becomes like this barrier to entry of something that is actually,
most
rightfully
natural thing,
everyone's
right.
and definitely yours, right? So sometimes we're like, oh, in order to be the best hydrated, I need to go and get injections to have hydration, and that we absolutely talked about biohacking and how there are a lot of things that we have access to in this time. There's a lot of customizable health related things that can help you. And I think you don't want to bypass the most simple thing
Right.
of eating, an orange and watermelon and having proper food
Absolutely.
combinations and
Absolutely.
giving yourself some time to digest everything. Because what we talked about in the class that we highlighted in the Q&A is how your sex organs are very near to the digestion organs, right? So from your small intestine, large intestine, the small intestine is actually the longer one, right?
Right.
Your stomach, all of those things, if you're full, if you're not digested properly, like your sex function, just in the physicality of it, can be affected because
That's right.
you aren't going to be comfortable to have sex. You're not going to be hydrated to have sex. You're not going to have enough stamina, enough endurance, and
Flexibility.
all of those things you can affect by some simple activities. And I think in our culture, we get our habits very young, which is why Masha's always reminding me about what to give to our children and how to position foods to our children. Because when we are young, this is when we've made up what's going to be our comfort foods, what's going to be our treat foods, and when are we going to give those things to ourselves as a reward. So that's my biggest takeaway, that is, we hit these conversations in this kind of cyclical way in the Black Love School, and we're talking about the art and science of Black love culture, and we are benefiting from, 4 very dynamic seasons living here on the East Coast of the United States. And so whenever we get to something, although the information is true and it's universal for us, when we get to it at a certain period in the year, I think it's that cyclical knowledge that we always talk about in Indigenous culture, where you're coming 360, but then you're elevating that coil knowledge of how am I dealing with these principles today in my life, how I'm working in my family, how, the ages of my children and myself, what phase, what age am I that I am revisiting true information and right information and at this point in my life. So how do I work that in and take a little bit of an audit of how things are going and check in? Because the one thing that happens when you get introduced to something young, and what we talked about in the live Q&A, is you then merge all that into your personality, and that's going to be your habits when you're in your early 20s, as Masha was saying.
Absolutely.
And then whatever habits you build, your life is majority habit based. So even when you learn something new, when you want to do something new, you always have to take it back to the fundamental habits that you have around it, so that something can be built and stick, or something can be eliminated without this pressure that you are missing out, right? Because anyone can restrain for a little while, but then you will end up doing the binging and purging. So that was my biggest takeaway, is the habits that I've created and rebranding for myself, uninstalling the apps and the downloads that say what is a treat and how you get treated and how you should indulge but not overindulge. Those are all points that we can take a look at ourselves and see how it's going. Not the only time, but I often see that people address their sex health and their health in general when there is like really terrible
crisis.
Right. So when you're in crisis mode, that's when people come in. They don't care how much money they've spent. They'll get rid of $300 worth of food if on the way, like coming back from the doctor.
Right.
Or if something happens to an immediate family member, people can stop smoking, stop drinking that day. I've seen it happen with women when we find out that we're pregnant. The most committed, most committed will say,
they'd be like, weed is natural. It don't, you're pregnant. Oh, I gotta stop smoking
I'm just,
weed.
Because I think it's that external accountability of thinking about, hey, I might want to do this, and I might even return to drinking and smoking or eating a certain kind of way. But you know what? For the 9 months, for the 10 months, when I find out, if I find out I'm 2 months pregnant, I could have had whatever yesterday. But now I'm saying, let me take my vitamin. Let me do this, because the focus is now on legacy, in the most micro way of my child, and I can suspend myself. And this is some people, because some people can't, right? So, or some people don't. they don't change whatever it is that they're doing, but a lot of people do. And that flip of a switch can happen without, it can happen for you. It can happen right now. It can happen without the news from the doctor, without the loss, without the pregnancy. It can really happen. And you can check in on yourself before you get some news. I think it's so important for Americans to understand, for Black people in a country that is preying on, selling us the, pitches of better health without taking inventory on our habits. We need to take inventory on our habits to do some preventative care. And when you're talking about sex health, I think some of the most important things are breath, hydration, circulation, but those are the important things for life. And I think sex is so complementary to being life forward.
Yeah.
It's the way that we create new life, but also just between two partners who aren't intending to create life. Like Masha and I are past the period of having any more children.
Yes.
There's still creation between us.
Yes, yes.
There's still creation in our own individual lives. And so the vitality that comes to you in your youth in order to help create new youth, new life, that's something that you want to maintain and hold on to for as long as possible for yourself and for the dynamics between you and your partner and for your soulmate self together. Like, what are you still creating? What is the rest of your legacy that you're living, and how active and how fulfilling can it be? So to me, those are my biggest takeaways. But what we talked about is, this is the Q&A. So everything is on demand. You can listen to it as many times as you want. And we're coming together as a community for the accountability and for the sharing of best practices and what's worked. And this is something that, we want to be able to keep the conversation going through the membership and through the individual coaching, if anyone needs it, to make sure that after you get that information, you're not passive and you can actually activate, tweak, and see results in your life.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the community element is always so refreshing. It was great for me last night. Now we're talking about something very intimate. So we got Black people of a range of ages from, like early 30s all the way up to their early 70s, right, was there last night. And, we're talking about something very intimate. A lot of couples were present, single people were present. And, but we don't really have curated spaces where we could be safe and talk in a very positive and affirming way, not just about our problems as it relates to relationships in the gender war culture. So I always appreciate that about the Black Love School conversation. And what was interesting to me last night, which is, often indicative of our position, the men were very focused, myself as well, focused on our self-care, and the women were very focused on themselves, but also a lot of the questions and comments they were asking were about supporting their men. And I thought that was a very interesting takeaway that I perceived last night. But overall, as usual, per usual, the conversation was dope. We laughed, we mixed it up. We talked about very sensitive subjects in a respectful way. We all came out with some references. The hard work assignments gave us some things to do. Men knew the things that they need to start taking in, and some of the practices, cleaning that colon, because on the inside, when you see your body, a colon is above the prostate. When the colon becomes prolapsed because of meats and stuff like that, the lining of the colon is not designed to hold acid, blood, and all the stuff that's in impacted meat for a long time. When that starts to seep through the colon walls, it then penetrates the prostate, and that is the source of prostate cancer, one of the main sources of prostate cancer, along with overused ejaculation, the constant spasm experience that we can have from ejaculating through sexual intercourse or masturbation can definitely damage your prostate. So having these sensitive conversations in a community of couples and singles, younger and older, people who've been married, 50 years, all the way to people who in the midst of a struggle love relationship. It's an interesting mix and dynamic. And, we try to set the tone of beautiful honesty and vulnerability that then spreads through the group. So that's what we're looking to standardize. If that is something that sounds like it's something you would want to be a part of, a departure from all this silly relationship conversation, gender warism, and just not knowing what to do, not knowing how to bring certain conversations to yourself or to your partner, this is where you want to be. This is the right space to be. You can check it out for pennies a day, cancel anytime. But there's nothing else like it in the marketplace I see. And I'm always looking. So last night was great. Sex diets was the conversation. It was edifying. It was socially pleasing. It was funny. It was moments where it was like, whoa, oh, snap. We had those aha moments and we rose higher as a group. And now it's time for us to keep the conversation going, as Nawasha said, utilize the information that we got. If it's one or two things out of the many things that was said that we can grab onto and start utilizing in our relationship and in our life practice, we're better for the wear. And so that's what we on. That's what we pushing. That's what we'll continue to do. We're inviting you to join with us, to join the membership so you can get the pre-recorded classes and you can listen to them all. And then you could be prepared as we come into the next live Q&A that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And I'm not sure what we're dealing with. I think we're dealing with promiscuity or something in the membership, one of the classes. But we'll be sharing that out to you so you're aware and you can get ahead of the curve. But that's what we're offering. The Black Love School is the International Relationship Academy where we live, learn, and love together. We're offering you to come out, join us, catch the wave, join your 2 cents, 3 cents, 20 cents in the conversation, your perspective, bring your mate, and we'll have elevated, cultural, respectful conversation about the art and science of Black love culture. And so, as always, we're looking to serve you well. And until that time, we're greeting you in the everlasting words of Black love culture. And we're saying,
Niakoma.
Niakoma.